actually hit record. So I'm going to talk for a little bit, and then this is about a question and answer. This is about opening up to your situation and your experience and how to adapt this and how to apply this to what you're doing. So if you have a question, I'd actually prefer you unmute yourself and interrupt me. You're welcome to type it in chat, but let's hear what you have to say. And honestly, there's no bad questions. There's no dumb questions. It's, if you have it, most likely someone else on this call or someone that's watching will have that same question. So I'd rather have you bring it up and ask what ways that we can best as a community help each other, shift more capital flows towards impact and towards those things that are making the world a better place. And that's what this is all about. So yes, and for those who are joining, just chime in with where in the world you're dialing in from. And we've got people from across the globe and friends from a lot of different places and some new people that we haven't met yet. So glad you have all here. Thomas, good to see you. You still in the cabin in Oslo?
Definitely.
Yes.
Good to see you.
Yes. Awesome. So let's jump right in. Eric, can you enable screen sharing for me? I guess we switched that over.
Oh yeah, let me work on that for you. Hold on.
Fantastic. Yes. And let's see. Okay.
There we go.
So we've got let's see, can you see my screen all right? Yep, does it show up? Cool.
Looks good.
Okay, so this is why you're here. Whether recession's happening and whether it's not, we'd rather be prepared and have the tools that we need in whatever economic situation we have to best protect our fundraising and be more successful in that camp. So have some things based on research that we've had, some of our experience, and also we'd love to mine the collective experience of those that are here, of share your experiences and what's worked for you, what you've found. So we kind of went through housekeeping already, but once again, feel free. I want to hear your questions, chime in and unmute and ask as we go. So we have people probably from all across the capital spectrum. I mean, raise your hand if you are only from like, I would guess not many people are in this camp, but purely traditional investing, you don't care a look about impact, you probably wouldn't be here. But or who's on the far end of the spectrum of pure philanthropy, solely nonprofit. I know we have a few. Most of the focus for this, and there are some nuances, differences with philanthropy and nonprofit. We are, most of our examples are focusing on more of that impact space in the middle. But these relate to also nonprofit fundraising. So there's lessons that we can all learn from that. At the end of the day, this is a simplistic look at the fundraising formula. I mean, so it's really a physics example of like a projectile, or if you were leaping over a hurdle, the force required to overcome that height and what it is to, like we have that H is sort of our fundraising hurdle, or put that the dollar sign of what we're trying to, the fundraising amount we have. And in a typical environment, the efforts that we make, so we've got a fundraising target here in green and the efforts that it takes to overcome that hurdle. So in good times, we know what it takes. We have experience in that, or what's worked in the past. But we're in somewhat a different climate, or there's fears that we're leading into a different climate of economics with inflation or recessionary fears. There's geopolitical uncertainty, and there's also greenwashing and increasingly a crowded space of what used to be unique for of saying we're in impact or we're doing good in the world. Is that message is it's much more crowded space. It's becoming more white noise. Your need to differentiate is much higher. And so now that same effort in red that used to get us over that hurdle, through no fault of our own, the ground beneath us has shifted. It's actually, we're starting a few feet lower, if you will, as a way to illustrate that. And so those same efforts might not produce the same results anymore. We might need to do something different, or do more, or try things that we haven't before in order to overcome sort of this additional downward pressures that we face in our fundraising. Is that making sense? Is this illustration even useful? Like for me, I'm part science nerd. I kind of grew up watching PBS, and like that was sort of the, I geeked out over documentaries and stuff like that. And so I kind of think, visually in this way, like is the model somewhat making sense? Like thumbs up if yes, or shake your head no. Okay.
Yeah, this makes sense.
Awesome. So, so this is also an interesting finding. I mean, so Boston Consulting Group has done an investor sentiment study for the last 21 years. And the one that just recently came out that they launched, that they released this month, had this finding. So 63% of investors thinks it's more important to protect EPS than, even if it means compromising your ESG agenda. So what does that mean? Investors are willing to trade off making impact as long as they protect their returns. And from Financial Times, this is 2 years ago, but that 9 out of 10 investors would prioritize a company's economic recovery over its ethical principles, a sign that investor commitment to more responsible forms of investing is faltering in the market downturn. So what does this mean, or why share these things? Is I think it's good to know at least where we stand, that the bad news is that in most cases, investors or donors often care more about returns than impact. And nonprofit space is going to be somewhat different, but there's still similar pressures of uncertainty in the market is a deal killer, or it's that added friction that makes investing that much harder. And these macroeconomic things are also out of our control. We can't do much to solve a war in Europe or change inflation rates. So that can be maybe discouraging, but I do want to focus on what is the good news. I think there are things that we can control. There are things that we can do, and that's why we're here. That's what we're talking about, is how do we recession-proof our fundraising, or learn those principles that are going to help us regardless of the economic situation. And also, one of the things that I think is one of my soapboxes as we work with impact organizations from across the world, is we're all working to try to tackle some of the world's biggest problems, and yet we think we have to do it alone. We have our little silo, and we're sort of struggling away in silence. And there's a rich community of others that might be trying to solve similar problems, or might have a totally different problem, but are have learned lessons that we can benefit from. And I'm a big believer that we're stronger together, and that we're only going to reach the Sustainable Development Goals. We're only going to be able to reach those who need us most, or save the planet, or whatever that issue is, by collectively sharing resources, sharing ideas and best practices. And that's the spirit of what we're trying to do today is what have we learned and how do we disseminate that so that we can all benefit?
Awesome.
Yeah. So the real question is, as we find ourselves in this lower state of what maybe used to work might not work anymore, and we have these downward pressures, how do we create more lift? How do we clear our fundraising bar even in these harder times? So the next recommendations and ideas are pulled from a number of sources, but both research that we've conducted in our original research study of 153 different impact organizations from 34 countries, and looking at what were the trends, what things were highly correlated to success in fundraising. There's also some outside examples and other research that we tried to pull from. We tried to find what are some actionable tools that you can walk away with, that you can be proactive and implement right now that are in your control, that you can take action. And sometimes even that sense of maybe feeling hopeless or fearful, having a game plan or having some things that you can control and work on and do gives you that sense of optimism. And honestly, this is going off script a little bit, but often it's that energy that we bring is as important as all the other elements of, like, when someone interacts with us, when we meet a potential donor, a potential funder, do we have a spirit of, do we have an energy of success and positivity that attracts more? And unfortunately, desperation has a repelling effect. And so when we feel a sense of control, when we feel like people want to be part of something successful and they want to be, and the irony is money will flow where it's already needed, and where it's not, it's not needed, it's where it's successful, and where it maybe is needed most, it can be avoided. But it's, so I think having a positive approach is maybe an additional thing that overlays all of this. So the first kind of main header that I'd say is this umbrella topic of aligning interests. So we need to really get better at figuring out what our investors really want. And that maybe seems like an easy thing to say, but until we know what someone wants, like the heart of any story is actually putting your audience at the center of that story. And people rarely act against their own self-interest. It's such a uphill battle to convince somebody to care about something they don't already care about. So it's much more, it's much more effective to help align, help them see that you are a way to help them get what they already want. So how do we do that? How do we actually get better at figuring out what investors really want? Surprisingly, sometimes we just have to ask. And also listen to what the questions they ask. What's the question behind that? That often can reveal the real concerns and fears. You probably will get a lot of no's, and those can be actually incredibly valuable to find out why. So ask a question of, like, so on a selfish note, we only get better as we learn. I know you turned us down, but what insight, your insights are incredibly valuable as we find the right fit with investors. What was the biggest factor in your decision to turn us down? Listen to what they have to say. And sometimes it's also probing of, like, oh, it just wasn't a good fit. Help me understand, what was it? Why was that? What's one thing we could tweak that would make that different? We're not trying to wheedle our way back in, but we want to learn from you because you are seeing things that we're not. Also, when that's not a possibility, or even in addition to this, look at what they have funded. Where are they putting their money? Why are those bets different than betting on your venture? And can you go and talk to their current portfolio companies or funds? How did they present? What are they saying that you're not saying? A lot of this has to do with stop trying to convince the wrong people to care about something they don't already care about. Especially in uncertain markets, investors tend to retreat to what they know and to stay closer to their existing impact themes and mandates. When money is flush and people can extend out farther, but it tends to retreat to what's tried and true for them, and what is most important in their for their initiatives. So spend less time barking up the wrong trees and try to find more of the right trees to bark up. Look at who's invested in opportunities like yours in the past. In our research study, when we asked how these impact organizations found investors, the number one source was contacts of senior leadership at 69%. But the second highest source was investigating those who had funded similar organizations, which was at 50%. And then the third was conference attendees at 36%. So once you've found what you believe is a good potential investor and you've uncovered what they really care about, how can you highlight what you can uniquely deliver and how that is giving them what they are already looking for? This speaks to a core finding from our research as well, that one of the factors that was most highly correlated to fundraising success was this idea of speaking to both the head and the heart. So head representing the logical business case of why you're a good place for their money, and also the heart of making an emotional connection to what they care about. And so organizations that did both were highly correlated with success in fundraising. So that shows up in showing significant impacts from your work and having a strong business model, and then also strong visual storytelling and brand story. So compelling fundraising arms both the logical brain with justification and engages the emotion of the limbic brain that actually is what unlocks behavior. So you can convince people all day long with spreadsheets and facts and numbers, and they can agree with you, but unless they feel something, they won't act. Emotion is what unlocks that decision and unlocks their pocketbooks. So an example of
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah, please.
Sorry, you're talking about the head and the heart, and I find this so fascinating. Can you give an example? Earlier you mentioned that, during hard times, investors prioritize returns, over impact. So what is a good way or an example to speak to the head and the heart during these financial downtimes? How do you get them to see that impact is actually what drives the returns? What's some of the tactical ways you've done that?
Yeah, no, great question. I mean, I think there's there's a few things in that question. I mean, there's so I think making a case for it's understanding. An example that comes to mind. So with Jonathan Rowe's companies, they had their Fund 5. And for those of you who may not be familiar with them, they're a real estate developer that focuses on low-income housing, and they renovate them, turn them green and sustainable, and also bring in social services to help create these mini communities of opportunity. So to help raise people out of poverty in their system, not just put a roof over their head, but give them opportunities to thrive. And so part of this is the economic downturn was coming. They had somewhat modest returns compared to some other potential investments, but they've focused on people who care about solving this similar issue. So focusing on those type of investors, and then also the focusing on highlighting some of the factors of now there's ways that they have to advertise this or talk about it, but they have years and years of track record that helps make this is a safer bet. And also they have you know, a 12% IRR plus that they can showcase in past funds. So they, yeah, are there places that you can make more money? Yes, but also this is secured by real estate, and they have this track record, and they also were the ones that that helped write the regulations for the federal housing of like how to do this in the right way. Because so there's thought leadership, credibility building, there's aligning with what they're these investors are already looking for of solving housing inequity, and making this a safer bet for them than maybe some other alternatives. As you know, so it's not just, oh, where can I find the highest return possible? It's also, hey, I want to find this right mix of, I want to drive impact, but I also want enough security in my return. And so they were able to, with that Fund 5, they were looking to raise 300 million during the pandemic, and they actually were oversubscribed and raised 525 million.
Wow.
And so what we helped craft for them was a fundraising film to add in more of the emotional appeal and like paint the picture of how this economic opportunity, you know, is like, it's a safe bet, but also it's driving the impact that you already care about. And so it's arming with, like, there's a strong business case, and also there's a connection to what people truly care about and helping real people's lives. So I know, did that somewhat answer your question? Or
Yeah, it did. Thank you.
Okay.
Jacob, it's Michael.
Yeah, please.
Yeah, I tried to send an image, but the fourth line in your slide right now, I sent you an image of Nelson Mandela saying, which was the cause that created my business 20 years ago. And Mr. Mandela says, if you talk to a man in a language he understands, that speaks to his head. If you talk to him in his native language, that speaks to his heart.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I created the company that I started, .sub, to be able to speak to everyone in the world's native language. And unfortunately, Americans think that everyone in the world speaks or understands English. So they don't need to spend the time or effort to speak to people in their native language. And that is a really tragic mistake, because you don't connect at a deep emotional level. So you might want to just take that slide and share that, because that's exactly what you said. I have not seen anyone use that phrase on a presentation, but it's exactly perfect.
Lovely. Thank you, Michael. Thanks for sharing that. And yeah, ways to get to the heart. That's also speaks to visual storytelling, of ways that a picture speaks 1,000 words, and also is, you know, and it's one thing to say, you know, if you're trying to convince somebody that you're wealthy, you don't go and tell them, hey, I have lots of money. You show them, you show up in a Porsche, or you know, like, not that this is about like trying to show your wealth, but it's like, show, don't tell. The more you can show the impact of what you're doing, or show returns, or show results, that's going to speak volumes more than just saying, oh, we're really good at this, you know? Yeah. And so there's a great stat of just stories are actually 22 times more effective than just facts alone. So mine those stories and connect people. So one of my favorite quotes is, the shortest distance between two people is a story. How do you make that emotional bridge to a potential investor? It's actually, how do you connect with them through stories that speak to what they care about and show that you are a bridge for them to overcome their obstacle to get what they want. Great input. Thank you. So second big thing, in sort of the sea of kind of confusion or fear or doubt, try to create an island of safety. So what does that mean? The more that you can try to de-risk your offer and increase it with trust building factors. So let's be honest, there's things that you can't necessarily retool or re-engineer your business model overnight or in significant ways. If you could create more returns for investors, you would. so that's sometimes a harder lever to pull. I think it's maybe highlighting the strengths that you already have or the things that you're uniquely set up to create. But another thing of sort of like, what are these trust building factors? Our brains are very much set up to look for shortcuts, to be efficient and to save resources. And investors are no different. And they're often happy to rely on other people's due diligence. Or if someone else trusts you, then they are more likely to extend their trust. So what are ways that you can identify that trust that other people have extended to you? So that's proofs of, are there logos of partners, or are there names of other investors that have already invested, or are there people on your advisory board that have cachet in your space? What are other certifications or third-party validation points that can make you less risky of a venture? This also brings up the idea of show, don't tell, show proof of your impact and results. Like, this isn't just an idea that I dreamed up and I created a PowerPoint, but there's an actual business that has actual results and impact. And one of the things that case in point, responsibility investments out of Zurich, like a close to $4 billion AUM asset manager. So one of the things that they did is they have their regular impact report, but augmenting that with photos of actual beneficiaries or in stories of entrepreneurs and communities that have been benefited. So working both to solidify existing investors, and also it was a great tool for them in terms of attracting new investment. Was, yes, they have the, by no means do we say get rid of the financial reporting at all. It's more augmenting that with tangible examples of what you do and trying to make the theoretical more tactile and tangible. Another quick thing is just don't give our brains are in, we also are scanning and quickly trying to disqualify. So, we have the reticular activating system. We're filtering out so much content all the time. And we're quickly trying to say, is this relevant for me or not? And this happens in seconds. And unfortunately, a book is almost always judged by its cover, until it's read. So we worked with a green bond that they came to us after they had pitched to a group of Silicon Valley investors, and they had a personal connection. And after the pitch, the friend kind of pulled them aside and said, if I wasn't your friend, we would have sort of laughed you out of the room because of how your presentation looked. That's the last thing you want. You're here because you care about and you do meaningful work and you want to drive that impact and change lives and make a difference. So don't let yourself be disqualified summarily because you showed up, in a sense, to that interview wearing a tank top and cut off jeans, or wearing your pajamas to a business interview. How you dress your message does make a difference. So how do you dress the story of your impact and your investment? Let them see the value and the good that you're doing. And so it isn't just about pouring money into marketing or making it look fancy. It's just, like keep it from being a liability for you. we've got someone that needs to be muted. There we go. Awesome. So, and I'm running long-winded. Are there questions already? Like, we've gone way over the 15 minutes, so I want to be sensitive to what we said or time, or how are we doing?
So no questions in chat yet.
Awesome. So,
Jacob, could you just make this? Maybe it's my thing to do, but that I only read half of the words on my screen. Is there something you can do, or do I need to change?
Good question. Are the rest of you seeing more of the screen?
Yeah, we see the whole screen.
Okay. Okay.
I'll see what don't worry about it.
And you'll get a link to the recording too, where you can see all of the
In
screens.
the top right of the screen, you can hit view and you might be able to adjust it there.
Yeah. Okay. No worries.
So another big topic that came out of the research and other examples is as maybe this is a very American example of baseball, which isn't as accepted all over the world, but this idea of, as our batting average goes down, we need to get more at bats. So what does that mean? So, like, if we're getting more no's, we need to broaden our net to reach more people. And also part of this is, as we're better filtering right fit investors that already care about what we're doing, we're going to need to maybe have a broader net of to collect enough to get over our fundraising hurdle. So as we've mentioned, the largest source of finding funders comes from our study was found that connections of senior management. So keep growing that pool and consider ways to expand the breadth and frequency of building connections of your management team, of your senior leadership. Also, the research suggests that building relationships at face-to-face opportunities like conferences or events is a highly effective way to find potential investors. So it was the third source of potential investors in our study was conference attendees at 36%. 61% of respondents said they or someone from their organization attends fundraising or events or conferences. And one of the things that we also wanted to see is like learn from the outliers. So this study was done looked at, for by and large, most people saw that fundraising became, during an economic downturn, it was harder to reach investors, it took more time, and they were able to fundraise less. But there was about just under a fifth of the group that saw increases in their fundraising, even during a downturn. So what did they do differently? So we went back through the data and we looked at what are the things highly correlated to them, like what things are statistically significant that they are doing that maybe others aren't. So we can learn from the outliers there. This is just a group of those who actually increased fundraising over that same period. One of the things was they were far more likely to be attending conferences or events. They were far more likely to be speakers and sponsors at those events. And I think that speaks to having this third-party validation of being a trusted source. And another thing of broadening the net is they're actually far more likely to use third-party groups to make introductions to qualified investors. So it speaks to, once again, of broadening that net, that having more, expanding that reach broader, and having more opportunities to connect with the right fit investors. The last kind of big topic is everything's going to take longer. Just embrace that and start earlier. And invest in these things that are going to maybe the long tail investments of relationships over transactions, and that being consistent is and frequency over time is going to pay off than a flash in the pan kind of effort. So pace yourself with this, and it's maybe less of a sprint and more of a marathon. But when you know you're preparing for a marathon, you're going to bring different things than if you're coming for a sprint. So how do we take this if our new baseline is lower?
Just going to interrupt you briefly before
Yeah.
we move on to this next part. There was a question from Hannah again. I know you mentioned visual storytelling. Do you recommend showing a video during speaking engagements or a presentation or a mix of both? What have you seen that's been most memorable or impactful?
Yeah, I mean, that's I have definitely strong bias towards visual storytelling, and also the data reinforces that of having a strong visual story is a way to speak to the head and heart. So it's having strong visual storytelling at events is a great way also to build credibility of not just being there, but having your story shared and communicated. It's a way to help combat. Another thing is combat the clarity decay curve. So as a leader in your organization, you might have a very clear sense of what your story is and what your impact initiative is. But what the research shows is as soon as you step outside of your head and go to your team, that drops by half. So from 74% cuts down to less than 30%. And if you look at those outside of your organization, like investors or partners or donors, it goes down to 13% that actually understand and have a crystal clear understanding of what your story is. So the more that you can make it tangible and articulated outside of your head, the more clear it's going to be throughout your organization and also to those outside your organization, like potential funders. So the more that you can share that visual story broadly, the more effective you're going to be. So great question, Hannah.
I apologize. I'm going to interrupt again. You said that the clarity of the message goes from basically these organizations know what they stand for all the way down to only 13% know what these organizations stand for.
Yeah.
It's that big a drop.
Yeah. So it's a like power law distribution. Like it's a if you will, it's like a steep curve down from, if you go from a founder or the key like leadership team having a crystal clear idea of what their story and impact and imperative is, to even people inside the organization, it cuts by half and it drops by half again as soon as you go outside the organization to that might be partners, that might be people you're trying to recruit, that might be investors, that might be your strategic partners. So it's a huge drop off of, like, it might seem very clear to you, and in your head it's like, of course everyone knows what we're talking about, but as soon as you step outside of that, it drops precipitously. And so one way to help combat that is you've got to articulate it and set it in stone, as it were, create a flag that you can say, this is who we are and this is what we believe and this is what we're about, so that everyone can reference that one point, not, this handful of conversations that you thought really articulated it from your brain to them, but then it's telephone game from them to the next department, to your funders, and to the general public.
Jacob, are you using like this idea of visual storytelling? You're using that internally and externally. So you're communicating not just from leadership, but to the team, and then also using that at events outside as well. So it's kind of a two-part benefit.
Yeah. I mean, so I literally wrote this quote down today, and I felt happy to hear this. So we're doing a project for Triodos Investment Management. They're an asset manager in the Netherlands, and some of you probably heard of them. We're doing a fundraising film for them, but they showed it internally on Monday. And this quote of, a coworker came and said, I'm understanding again why I work for this company.
Oh,
So,
wow.
so one, it's motivational internally and externally when you have something that's clearly articulates who you are and what you stand for and why you exist and why you should care. Usually it's marketing dollars that go to spend that because you anticipate that's going to bring a return. But it also, and we see this play out all the time, it also is incredibly powerful for retention, for recruiting, for alignment inside of an organization. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you.
So
Interesting.
we go from here, if we extend the runway, plan on things taking more time, we widen our net to reach more of the right potential investors. We create more safety by de-risking our opportunity to them, and we align their interest. We help them get what they want. We're better set up to overcome that fundraising hurdle and actually get the results that we're aiming for our organizations, so we can drive the impact that we are trying to make in the world. Hopefully that's giving you some ideas of things that you can do. And let's open this up now to questions and what wasn't clear, or how do you apply this to your specific situations?
Benjamin has a question.
I'm just curious that you didn't mention social media at all. Can do you have any study or anything about LinkedIn or any other way of connecting with people? Facebook, Instagram, what is working for anybody, if anything?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And our study did not look at the granularity of social media versus some other things. There's some anecdotal things as far as what we've seen, and just general thought leadership of establishing a position of authority and having more frequent touch points and giving your expertise away on a regular basis and educating your audience. But I'm happy to go see what I find on as far as that specific question, but I'd love to open it up to the group and see what have you found as far as using social media on with your fundraising efforts. Who's had positive, negative experiences, or what can you share? Yeah, Janelle.
So what I would say in response to Benjamin's question is essentially social media can be a good tool in terms of finding contacts, knowing who's the relevant person that you want to speak to at any particular organization, and also kind of narrowing down what is their focus area. I don't know if it's enough for relationship building, so I would think of it as an entry way or just a way to make the contact. But from there, you need to graduate that relationship to an email or telephone number, couple of calls, and if possible, an in-person meeting, because there was something Jacob mentioned just now about touch points. And I think especially going through the fundraising process, this balance between your head and your heart, it's a lot about relationship building. People have to feel like they trust you and understand what it is that you're doing well enough. And you don't get that through one or two conversations. It's fundraising ends up being more of a longer term thing, just because you really do want to bring them along on your journey as well. So they'll feel emotionally invested so that they can be financially invested, if that makes sense.
Good.
I love that. I know, was that helpful at all, Benjamin?
Sure. You
Yeah.
know, I've just been building a LinkedIn following for a long time, and I actually have met a lot of people that way, but nothing has really ended up being, affecting the fundraising. So it's just, I think all the things that you're saying are very helpful, and what we need to do is become better at telling our story.
Mm.
Thank you.
Thanks. And I mean, and I think there's principles that translate for sure on LinkedIn. I mean, your likelihood to accept an invite from someone that comes, oh, we're connected to 50 other people that I know and trust, or
Right.
they have a position of authority, or they have something that feels like relevant to me. When it's some random person I'm not connected to that has no bearing on what I care about, I just ignore those. But yeah, how do we, and I think there's LinkedIn research that can find, it's a great tool to find the right people at those places and maybe make an entry. But to Janelle's point, it might be a first step to then, and accelerate that in different ways. Yeah. So
So we have another question in chat, and Michael, you had a question as well. So Michael, you want to go first?
All right, yeah, thank you. I just want to show this. If people can see this, this was a slide that was put together by a British consulting firm called Business Fights Poverty. It was presented at the UN General Assembly 4 years ago. And if you see in the lower corner, it says that the SDGs are a 12 trillion, that's with a T, dollar opportunity. So they're saying that's $1 trillion a year over 12 years, or $80 billion a month. Okay, so here is a renowned consulting firm giving a written estimate at the UN General Assembly that there's $80 billion a month in large multinational budgets looking to do these things. And most of the companies in this space are small NGOs and 501c3s and nonprofits who don't have a lot of money and don't have the breadth and depth to do this. So I just, based on, Jacob and I have known each other, I don't know, a couple of years, but there is unlimited money in budgets. And the interesting thing is, as more and more private equity firms are getting larger and larger funds, their investors are asking them, you showed 12.2% financial return. What kind of impact are my investments making through your fund? Are they helping climate? And there's very little measurement devices available, so people can show actually a percentage of impact in terms of however you want to measure it. So I just want to make everybody aware that that is, I think, a huge opportunity, is how to try to tap in to tens of billions of dollars that are sitting in corporate budgets that are waiting for the right kind of opportunity to invest. Just a thought.
Awesome. And Michael, Thomas was asking if you could point to this study online, if anybody else wanted to be able to take a look at that as well.
I'll scan it and I'll send it to Jacob, and then you can distribute it to, I don't know whether it's available online. It was handed out in 2018. I mean, at the same time, at the same meeting, just to give you an idea, some of you might have heard of this company called Disney. It's a brand new company. It's just a startup. In 2017, they spent 25 million aligning Smurfs with the SDGs and 30 million aligning Angry Birds with the SDGs. So here, 5 years ago, Disney spent almost $1 billion aligning their brands with SDGs. So just that, I have a lot of this kind of information, but there's a lot going on, but most people are focusing on much smaller numbers, but the big numbers aren't getting attended to.
Awesome. And then Jacob, there was a question from Hannah as well, piggybacking on actually the social media question earlier from Benjamin. So Benjamin, this might address your question a little bit too. Of different social platforms have different viewership patterns. So for instance, TikTok is typically short videos, whereas YouTube's longer videos. How do you still align your visual storytelling, your storytelling, so that it still demonstrates the impact, whether it's 30 seconds or 30 minutes? So when Benjamin, I think this aligns with your question too, of I'm doing this push on these social media platforms, but I need to actually see the impact that I want to have on these platforms. So Jacob, what do you see working, or what do you see being kind of a truth across all of those different formats, platforms, lengths, etc.?
Yeah, thanks for the question. So a few things here. I mean, what I would say is, like, I would start with, so there's always some new shiny object. You know, there'll be the next TikTok that's something else, and often, you know, like, there's some initial excitement, and there's also, like, we think that all the rules of storytelling and marketing and in human behavior are entirely different, and it's still human beings communicating with human beings, and we still are wired the same way. So there's you know, what the same principles apply, whether it's TikTok or LinkedIn or face-to-face meetings. There are different ways to leverage those platforms in different ways that can be more effective. But so that's just sort of a grand rule, because sometimes I think we throw out, like, oh, that doesn't apply because, you know, gravity doesn't apply because this is TikTok. And it's like, well, no, that there's still some guiding principles that are there. Another kind of foundational thing is, the right platforms are the ones where your audience is already congregated, as opposed to trying to get people to come to a place they're not already. So find the watering holes where they're already at, and be present there, and provide as much value and give first, you know. So I'm a big believer in this, and this is one of my mantras of this. The Sanskrit, it's Om Vartanam Nama, and it means, one way to interpret that is, I nourish the universe and the universe nourishes me. So and that order is important. I first give out to the community, and I provide value, and I trust that will return to me in some way. And so it's when you have that mindset and you show up to platforms or places, watering holes, where your ideal potential investors are already congregated, and you show up and are giving them value and showing, like, helping them do their job better, helping their lives be better, or get what they want, then you're suddenly valuable, as opposed to, hey, look at me, give me your money, or, you know, it's like, if it's about what can I take from this group, you're a parasite. If you're a pollinator, there are things you want, but you're also providing a net benefit. As a bee, you're helping the flower, you know, as opposed to just extracting. So those weren't the questions that you're asking, but those I feel like are behind things as we advise people of where to be. The second guiding principle, or the third thing, is length is irrelevant and engagement is everything. So someone will sit and watch a 2-hour movie because it captures their attention. Now there's different audience expectations for different platforms. You know, so on social media, you don't have 2 hours to engage somebody, you know, and so you have to front load the relevancy and the hook or the engagement, like, make that much more prominent. And early on, they're not going to give you 5 minutes to see whether they like this movie or not. You have 5 seconds. So so understanding that the platform has different expectations, and, like, just the relationship we have with, you know, more and more of our content is being consumed on mobile devices with sound off, and it's part of their scroll. So if that's where you're showing up, if it's in that, how are you going to visually arrest them, get them to stop? And is there a way that your message is getting communicated in a visual way without sound that it gives them enough. But I do think there's probably more of a sense of instead of you have one Hail Mary pass that's going to communicate everything you ever wanted to your potential audience. And it's less of like this big message, and it's often more, how do you show up frequently and have all of those micro messages aligned so that it's sort of this magnetic principle of like a substance where all of the ions are pulling in the same direction suddenly has magnetic pull and is going to attract people to you. If those messages are all pointing in all different directions, it has no magnetic pull. So the more that all of your touch points align in the same way, even if they're micro across the whole substance, all across your whole experience, that's going to attract the right people. And on the other side, if you think of a magnet, it has a positive and a negative pole. The other pole is actually going to repel the wrong people. And that's sometimes as valuable as attracting the right people, because you don't want to waste your time with people who don't care about what you're doing, that don't actually have money to invest or aren't going to be worth your time. So it's consistent message that's aligned back to your core message, and make sure that it's optimized for that platform based on the audience expectations, and make sure that it's places that your people congregate. So if you're looking for institutional investors, maybe they're on TikTok, but that's probably their kids who are on TikTok or their grandkids who are on TikTok. But like, test it, see if it gets results, but also like optimize, like place your bets on places where there are higher congregations of people that you already want to talk to. That was a long answer to a simple question, but awesome. Well, I know we're up against time. Any last questions before we let you go?
Bye-bye.
No, thank you. And open invitation. Anyone happy to drill down on any of this content? Do a high-level audit of what you're doing and give you insights. And what my hope is to be a catalyst for your success, so that you can attract capital that you need to drive the impact you're trying to make. And that's really where I see, like, kudos to you guys for actually being the ones to drive that change and drive impact. And our job is to help provide you fuel to get that job done. So keep up the good work, and know that you're not alone. And I'm in your camp rooting for you. So thank you so much. And I'm happy to stay on if anyone wants to ask a question. I'll be on for another while, until for as long as you need.
Awesome.
Jacob.
Thanks.
Thank you. Good to
Thanks,
see you,
everyone.
Benjamin. Thanks, Janelle. Good to see you, Thomas.
Bye-bye.
And good to see you, Glenda. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you
Thank
so
you
much.
so much.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you. Thank you. We'll be in
Yeah.
touch, Jacob.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Awesome.
We'll
Fantastic.
go in.
Yeah. And
Very
Mike.
helpful. Thank you.
Good to see you. Is it Herald or Gerald?
Yes, Gerald, yes.
Gerald.
It is a very nice and insightful presentation. I don't know, but maybe this is more of a question, because I think I got stuck to the on how we can present both the head and the heart, and considering language barrier, because we don't speak English, and the culture that lies within the language, those stuff. How can we make a good presentation, especially to people coming from the northern hemisphere? So I don't know, but I just probably think it over this evening, how we can do it.
Yeah, well, that is a great question, and there are definitely cultural differences based on different places. I mean, so an American investor might want to cut to the chase and let's get to the numbers, and let's and and some cultures that's more offensive to like, no, there's a etiquette and there's a protocol of like, we need to build rapport and we need to talk. A British investor might be more polite and a Dutch investor might be a little bit more blunt and just say, no, that's dumb. I don't like it. One thing that as we look at storytelling, we all have our own lens that we really can't get outside of. And so it's just helpful to like get, even if you have a connection, a friend in that market, or someone that is close to the audience you're trying to reach, and bounce it off of them. Do a test presentation of like, does this land for you? I mean, it's a different case, but I know of a marketing firm that they test their design and their branding with the actual like people in that market, in that culture, because for someone that a yellow logo might mean something in Brazil, it might be very different in the Philippines, right? And that what the cultural context of that is. And so we can only know so much. So let's actually ask people in that space, what's working? What, does this word mean what I think it means for you? Like, and it's, and some of that like iterative process is just, let the market tell you, like let people in that space tell you. So that's, I don't know if that's helpful or if that's something you've already tried, but, having some advocates in that cultural context.
Yeah, I haven't done that, especially the testing of presentation, but that would be interesting, especially if we know people from the other side of the world, and we can do that test presentation. Yeah. Thank you so much, Jacob.
You
My
bet.
God.
I hope that was helpful. Thank you for coming, Gerald.
Yeah. Good night, everyone.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
Good morning, good
thank
night,
you.
good afternoon.
Yeah.
Thanks, Gerald.
Bye.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. Yeah, Nicole, any way that we can be of help for what you're doing? Or Glenda or anyone else that's left, but
Yeah, we're more concentrated on the faith-based organizations, focusing on faith-based philanthropy, because there's much data that we have, but we're kind of lost how to sell the impact that impact investors would invest on the community, and make their business thrive, because they cannot thrive with a failing society, like with problems with homelessness, etc. So maybe we can have a separate conversation on that, because we have much data in the Philippines that we are trying to work and sell, because impact investing is still kind of like in the initial stage of many of the organizations that we're working with, and I see a lot of potential in this regard. So maybe we can have a separate session or meeting with you. Thank you.
Yeah, happy to dive into that topic and offline and just do a one-on-one chat. I think that'd be great. Awesome. Oh, good. All right, let's stop the recording.